Welcome into the Beat Sessions, your place for all things music. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about this surprise drop from Kendrick Lamar entitled GNX. He released that on November 22nd. This is the sixth studio album for the critically acclaimed artist and his follow-up to 2022's Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And just when you thought that this year couldn't get any bigger for Kendrick, here he comes, doing what he does best in a way that very few artists could get away with. I love the surprise drop. 44 plus million hits on the first day alone that this thing was released. And I think the best part about it is that if you were on social media Friday afternoon, the news of this thing hit and everybody just stopped what they were doing to throw it on. I mean, you have a record that classic album cover for a record that I would say is pretty much on that status of being an instant classic. Just very few artists out there that can do what Kendrick does. And there's probably many of you that disagree with that. There's probably many of you that, especially after the feud with Drake this summer, are maybe just kind of burn out a little bit on the ego, the bravado, and to a certain degree, I can understand that a bit. It's a lot of people are calling this a Pyrrhic victory for him as far as winning that feud with Drake and then, earning the Super Bowl halftime show, but then showing up on a song like Whacked Out Murals, calling out Lil Wayne, the stir that caused a little bit as well. I would say that what I love about Kendrick at this point in his career is that he's just like any great character in any great story. Human, far from perfect. There's the good, there's the bad, there's the complexities that almost kind of seem like, he's undoing what he's done in the past. He might seem like a hypocrite at times, like everything that he's done maybe in the last year has undone the integrity of what an album like Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers brought to the table. An album where he brought down that braggadocious style a little bit. He was more personal. He was more of an open book on that record. I feel the compositions as well, too, the minimal nature of them. Experimenting and working with a lot of the influences that he's used throughout his catalog throughout the years, funk, soul, jazz, all of these, just great sonic elements that if you have eclectic taste in music, I feel like if you're a true hip hop fan or just a true fan of music in general, that's where a guy like Kendrick is just so magnificent. I'm talking about Tyler, the Creator, a few weeks ago, talking about how he's a blues artist. And, I didn't refer to Kendrick as a hip hop artist for a reason. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers won the Grammy Award for Hip Hop Album of the Year, but it was also nominated for Album of the Year. And I think that, man, you could really make a strong case to argue that that record should have won. What he brings to the table with, his perspective, the poetry, and the wordplay. I mean, it's just the complexity of what he does. It really, takes me back to guys like Tupac, guys like Biggie. When I got into college, when I first started listening to hip hop a lot more, like actually sitting down and listening to what these guys were saying, and not just what they were saying, but how they were saying it as well. And the funny thing about that is that I feel a lot of that experience there in my late teens and early 20s getting into the genre coincided with me taking, a couple of Shakespeare classes while I was going to school and pursuing my major. And so studying wordplay in those classes and then seeing what these guys have done, Tupac, Biggie, and now guys like Kendrick Lamar, guys like Tyler, the Creator, and the way that they are just able to manipulate words. I mean, it's almost like watching Jimi Hendrix just play his guitar. It's like an alien is speaking directly through him while he plays that instrument. And Kendrick Lamar has that ability. He has that level. And I think that, given his skill set, given his talent, given the catalog of music that he's built, and the complex nature of him as a person is what makes his music so compelling, so interesting, and so provocative and thought-provoking. I mean, there's all these different terms that you can use to describe Kendrick for better or for worse. And I think at the end of the day, he ultimately is out there trying to do something not just better for hip hop, but for the community in general that he comes from, and for the community of artists. I think that as he continues to create music, and especially with this new record GNX, a lot of people also referring it to as, kind of like a victory lap. And I disagree with that, to a certain degree. I mean, I guess, if you want to look at it as far as, it's his first album with PJ Lang and Interscope Records. He left Top Dog Entertainment and Aftermath. So, in a lot of ways, this does feel like a new start for him with regards to that. I love the G Funk influence on this record, really paying homage to the West Coast, to his home, to the place where his roots are down, and to where he I really feel like got most of his influence. I love that he just, he's the type of guy that is always paying attention to everything around him. So, talking about Nas and how he was the only one that reached out to him and congratulated him. You think about the differences between the East Coast and the West Coast style, and how guys like Kendrick, how guys like Tyler really have done a fine job of meshing those two sounds, those two styles together. I really feel like the looser, more experimental, almost kind of like proggy hip hop style comes more from the East Coast artists. And so it's cool to see guys on the West, um, not just like really be influenced by that, but to take the style of music to a whole new level doing what they're doing. I think that this record I love that he's showing up with a number of artists that I'm not super familiar with. I mean, SZA is an artist that obviously many of us have heard of, if not all of us. But Az Chike, Dodie Six, Peso. I mean, Roddy Rich, I am familiar with, but Dara Berea, I believe is how you say her name. She's featured on a couple of tracks. Just an incredible voice. She sings in Spanish. I love the way that he's bringing in artists that are from the area, local talent, and trying to build them up. I mean, I really feel that ultimately that's an example of what Kendrick is trying to do with his music overall. He might be bombastic, he might be in your face, he might be off-putting at times about it, but ultimately at the end of the day, his energy, whether it's anger, the angst, the whatever it is that he's bringing to the table, that intensity comes from a place of just wanting to see things be better, not just, himself, not just himself being better, but everybody around him, just bringing something bigger to the table, bringing something that has more substance, that has more value, that is, I think that what made the rap battle tough for this feud this summer, tough for a lot of people, is the fact that every artist walks that fine line of creating art and creating entertainment. And a song Not Like Us, it's one of those examples where it does both. It really is quite brilliant in that regard. You talk about the wordplay, you talk about the rhyme schemes, but then from an entertainment standpoint, that's a song that just was straight up club banger from the get go. And considering the ephemeral nature of it, I mean, in a couple of years, I think everybody's going to forget about the fact that Drake and Kendrick even feuded, which is, there's a solid argument there, is why waste your time? Like, why get into this? You've done all this other work, and this feud seems above what you've established yourself, or it seems below where you've established yourself. And why take yourself down like that? But I think that this new record GNX, it's another example of why he is so dynamic and so brilliant. There are very few artists that can be as critically acclaimed and as commercially successful as he is. And talking about the Roots last night, the anniversary of Phrenology, and another band that I've heard critics being on Fallon. I'm one of those critics that like I wasn't super thrilled, and the more I see late time talk shows veer in the direction that they're veering in, I don't really watch them anymore. It bums me out even more to see the Roots, being a house band for Jimmy Fallon's show. But I'm never going to hate on an outfit or an individual for seeing those opportunities and taking them. And the Super Bowl is the same thing. The halftime show, you consider the commodification of music, and Not Like Us is a perfect example of, you have a song about something that's pretty specific, but a hook that's so catchy and so open-ended that, I mean, now you've seen it at political rallies up to the election. There was all these different uses for that track, and it's tough territory to navigate. Some people are going to say that you're selling out. Some people are going to say that you've lost your artistic integrity. Whatever. I think that, you know, with great art, more often than not, especially now in this day and age with social media and the ability to promote yourself, to get yourself out there, um, you know, it's you're going to achieve some level of popularity. There is going to be some element of building a brand, putting yourself out there, and I think that that's the coolest thing about Kendrick is while there are inconsistencies, while there are imperfections, he is still committed to being who he is and not compromising for anyone or any entity. And I think that GNX continues that trend. I think it's a record that's got a lot of fun wordplay. Again, there's lots of cool, just, you know, as far as the bars that the bars that he drops and the way that those move around the beats that he's created with, you know, I love Soundwave here. Jack Antonoff is a bit of a surprise on this thing. I was kind of curious to read that and to see what this thing would be like. But I think that what Jack is helping with is, you know, a number of arrangements that again are working with that minimal drive, and so I really dig that and love that about the record. But he's taking arrangements that, you know, that orchestral stuff that he's so good at, the synth elements that he's so good at playing with, and really just kind of like filling out textures and bringing, you know, some of that soft texture in the backdrop to help fill out and complete these compositions. So I think it's an interesting turn. I don't know if it's necessarily something that, you know, I see him doing in the future. Maybe he'll continue to work with Jack, but I love the relationship with Soundwave. I love that, again, the list of contributors on this record, young up and coming stars, and I think that's cool that Kendrick is using his platform to help those artists do that versus, you know, just bringing in a bunch of big names to try to drive a record, to try to make just some big commercial thing. It's you know, I'm curious to see what your guys' thoughts are in the comments as far as that dynamic, walking that fine line between art and entertainment. Like, at what point does an artist compromise themselves? I don't think that Kendrick has, honestly. Before we get into the track list on this thing, I think that Kendrick has kept his integrity intact for the most part. He hasn't been perfect. There's definitely been hiccups along the way, and again, the rap battle for as commercially successful as that feud was for him, you know, I do think there's an element of, you know, maybe slow down, maybe back off. I understand saying what you need to say and airing grievances and just getting that stuff off your chest, because I think it's healthy. I don't think it's a good thing to lend resentment or frustration about an individual build. And with that point said, we're going to get into the opening track, Whacked Out Murals, which is just awesome. I'm really loving the opening vocal um, from Dara, speaking or singing in Spanish, and then it opens up this like just this sparse violin. I don't know if it's actual violins or if it's a synth element, but it's just like this scatato, excuse me, violin style, and you know, it just creates this sinister mood. Those staccato strings, they're absolutely amazing. Thick pulsating synths, and it just, like, he comes in just dropping bars, and there's this intensity, there's this just this tension that you feel building in the track. It's unfortunate, given, you know, given everything that he's talked about throughout his career, politics, social issues, everything. You feel that intensity, and you kind of wish that there was something more at the heart of it than just addressing a little bit of the beef that he's had with Lil Wayne and with Snoop Dogg. And I don't even know if it's necessarily beef. I think, again, like, I love the way that he handles those lyrics. If we get into the song here, it's I love the message of perseverance in the chorus too. Never let anyone put smut on your name, but understand ain't like everybody ain't going to be like you. And that's where I think, again, and get back to it before we get into the track list. Kendrick reminds me of a guy like Kobe Bryant, you know, using him as an example as far as the greats and what their energy is like and what their attitude is like. And there's a lot of people over the years that said Kobe Bryant wasn't necessarily the nicest teammate, wasn't necessarily the greatest teammate in a lot of regards, but they felt pushed and motivated by him for his example, as far as his training, his discipline, all those different things that he brought to the table. And so I think that, there's an element of restraint and maturity, I think, as far as the way Kendrick approaches this song. And it's I don't think that uh I don't think that, he's, trying to twist the knife and take this any further. I think that some things went down that he just wanted to get off his chest, and he did. And so I think that I find this lyric here. Um Used to bump the car to three, held my rolly chain proud. Irony, I think my hard work let Lil Wayne down. But then he says, whatever though, call me crazy, everybody questionable, which, I mean, I think that's a cool line. Everybody kind of is. And, in this day and age when people are quick to respond as well on social media, I think sometimes people will let their emotions get the best of them before they actually, think about what it is they're doing, what it is that they're saying. And so he goes on to say, Snoop posted TaylorMade. I prayed it was the edibles. I couldn't believe it. It was only right for me to let it go. And just that wordplay there. I mean, you just read it and you can just, like, the flow is so natural. Like, I'm not a rapper by any means, but that's what I love about his writing is, just reading the words off the page, you hear that flow, you hear just that natural, um, just rhythm in his vocals and what he brings to the table. So I love this track. I love the way that the beat finally hits at that moment in the song, and yeah, just addressing the haters right out the gate and making sure that he's covering all his bases there, and basically just again calling out hip hop for kind of flatlining, for kind of being this vapid, commercially driven genre. I feel pop music, you could say the same about it. There's other genres out there that I would argue, I feel the same way about. But again, like I love Kendrick just, holding rap artists accountable and just wanting them to be in this higher tier. Squabble Up is your second track, another banger. I really like just the way that this ups the energy, thick beat, get this laser like synth, so really that G funk feel, that West Coast style, creates a trippy effect for this track. Keeps the hard edge, and I love the sample. When I hear music by Debbie Deb, it's really catchy. It's a well incorporated into the track, and I think a fun element to it. Luther is your third track featuring SZA here. I love the Luther Vandross sample here as well. If This World Were Mine, Cheryl Lynn on that track as well. It's actually written by Marvin Gaye, but relax, acoustic R&B vocal. It's going to usher in a mellow beat for Kendrick to do his thing. It's a big change of pace coming off those first two songs, much more mellow. And again, I think SZA is fantastic on this track. Really enjoyed her. Man at the Garden is your fourth song. Sparse percussion, wavy, thick synth, other light textures that work in, and I love his flow on this one. There's this feel of Phil Collins in the air tonight, and I love the intensity and just the feel that this track creates. The lyrics too. Pull up some of these here. Twice emotional stability of sound body and tranquility. I deserve it all. Like minds and less enemies. Stock investments, more entities. I deserve it all. VVS's, white diamonds, GNX with the seat back reclining. Bitch, I deserve it all. There's definitely that balance of bravado, and I think also of acknowledging the hard work, acknowledging where you came from. And I think that's important. I think to a certain degree, being proud of what you've accomplished and knowing that, whatever it is that you've put around yourself that makes you happy, yes, knowing that you deserve that, having that confidence. I think it's something that often we see too much in our culture. I think it's one of the things that leads to people being so unhappy is, not acknowledging the good stuff that they've done in their life, what they've brought to the table, and focusing on the negative things, the failures. I think that in that braggadocious nature of his music, there is that quality. And again, you talk about the complexity. You talk about how things aren't always necessarily just black and white and simple to dissect and digest. And Kendrick is brilliant for that reason. So big fan of Man in the Garden there. Your fifth track, Hey Now, featuring Dodie Six. Hush synth sounds like a vocal. I love the clinking percussion, thick beat with a dark mood that's going to hit, enhanced by his hush vocal. And I really love the back and forth that these two guys have on this track. It's definitely a highlight for me. Reincarnated is your sixth track. This is an interesting track as well. We get Dara again with the Spanish vocal to open this thing up. Smooth R&B style bass. Get this icy, twinkly piano that works into the song. It's a great contrast to the aggressive vocal performance, though, but definitely feeling the likes of Tupac on this song. There's I'm trying to think here. I know that. I thought that there was. Yes, it contains a sample of Made. N-word, there we go. Written and performed by Tupac Shakur, featuring Outlaws. So great sample there. And there's moments where his intensity. My roommate walked in when I was listening to this one time. He's like, "Is that Eminem?" I was like, "No, it's Kendrick." But yeah, I mean, there's definitely that influence that you can feel. And I love the beautiful lush soundscape that's developed in that song. I thought it was pretty cool. TV Off, featuring Lefty Gunplay, is your seventh song. Staccato strings, driven up tempo beat. It hits that banger territory. I really like this song a lot, and the energy. Love is almost mumble style flow. It's fun that he, the cadence, the different ways that he plays with his voice. It's just one of the many things that makes him exceptional. It takes a turn in direction with this big horn-driven track, this sparse beat at the end, and it's funny. There's a meme out now, but Mustard working on production on that song, and you can hear him calling him out towards the end of it. It's pretty funny. Your eighth track, Dodger Blue, featuring Wally the Sensei, Siete, and Roddy Ricch. You guys know I'm a San Diego Padres fan, but I can't blame Kendrick for wanting to show his boys love, especially after the World Series win. Congratulations there. Dodger Blues got this 90s R&B feel, thick synth, bass element, light textures that just float in the background. It's probably, I'd say it's maybe one of the more forgettable tracks on the record. Not that it's bad, but it definitely just didn't hit me the way that a lot of this record did. Peekaboo, featuring AZ Chike, is your ninth song. Really dig the lo-fi vocal and guitar that ushers in a thick minimal beat. Eerie synths work in and out on this. You get more wavy styled synths that create a subtle backdrop for those two guys to do their thing. The Heart Part 6 is your 10th track, stealing that back from Drake. But I really I like the Latin guitar that opens up this thick R&B beat with bright synths that add a bit of shine to this song. Really just like the vocal appearance there as well. And then GNX. This is just Kendrick letting him and all the boys do the work. He's basically just hosting this thing. I think it's a cool penultimate track. You got Hitter J3, Young Threat, and Peso on this song. And it's why he's so great. It's I love the piano element. It's fire on this track. Minimal and intense beat remains that way throughout this track. And, just a great use of space and timing with all that, and just letting these guys go to work and show off why they're some of the best young MCs coming out of LA. And then Gloria, we get SZA back with this track to close things out. Gentle, sultry R&B track with Latin influences. Once again, I love that component. Latin culture, Mexican culture is massive in LA. And so it's great to see Kendrick recognize that, pay homage. And I love the percussion and the guitar and just the balance of that instrumentation there. But a big song, one of the bigger tracks to close this thing out, almost at 5 minutes. But I think this is the shortest album that he's ever put out. 12 tracks, 44 minutes. It's hot. It feels like there's very little filler and a lot that Kendrick still has to say. I really enjoyed this record. I think you guys will as well. I'm going to give this thing a 7.8 out of 10, and we're definitely going to throw the wax in the shelf next time we get to the record store. Hope you enjoyed this record and hope you find this review helpful. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help me blow this project up in 2024, and tune in to the live show, Classic Wax, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday nights, and we will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.